Hey friends, thanks for joining with us tonight as we conclude our midweek season. This is going to be the last one for a few months. We're going to take a little break as we do every year and just recharge and regroup and kind of cast some different vision and prepare for some of the fall series that we have going on. But we just want to say thank you for just partnering with us, letting us be a part of your life. And we hope that everything that we do and all the content that we produce is all purposeful and edifying for you to grow closer to Jesus. And so thank you for trusting us with that. And although we're going to be taking a break through midweeks, we're always going to be having content available even throughout the summer. And so we hope that you can continue to just engage with us. If nothing else, come out on Sundays. We always live stream our services unless there's technical issues or things of that nature. But we invite you to get on that too. And so as we conclude our series, Facing Anxiety, there's a story that I want to talk about, and it's the disciple of Judas. I feel like oftentimes we hear his story throughout the Easter, but it's always with a negative connotation. And I often wonder if we just sit back and we analyze the person of Judas, would we come up with a different conclusion? Obviously, it's still going to result the same. I mean, he got depressed. He ended up killing himself and all of that stuff, which is usually the negative side of the connotation that we put on him. He betrayed Jesus, but so did Peter. And yet we look at them very differently. And I think that what happens as we start to analyze this concept of anxiety as we face it head on, I think it's good to get some similarities from Judas's life that oftentimes happen to us. And so let me kind of explain where Judas was and what he's thinking through all this, at least in my opinion. I think oftentimes people think that Judas wanted Jesus to die, but there's evidence that that's not the case. As you see, once he realized that this was going too far and that they were in fact going to crucify Jesus, he went to take the coins back to the high priest, back to the religious leaders, and basically he said, I made a mistake, like what I've done, and I want to reverse it. And they go, hey, too late, the money's yours, it's blood money, it's yours now. And that's when he spirals downhill and ultimately leads in suicide. But the point here is that I think what's going on is that when Jesus went and started his ministry, he had a whole crowd of people following him. And eventually, as this crowd continued to come, he went to find 12 that he just wanted to invest in everything in. And these 12 were eventually going to go and spread the good news to the world around us and eventually come to what we know now as the church. And so as Jesus shared life with these men, they ate together, they slept in the same places, they walked with Jesus, talked with Jesus, everything Jesus did, they were a part of that. And so when it comes to this moment of betrayal, what's happening is that all of these guys are Jewish Hebrew boys. And these Hebrew guys, they had a preconceived idea of what they thought the Messiah should be. And they've been preparing for this their whole life. They've been searching every year as they come to do the Passover, which is going on currently, is that they're looking for the coming Messiah because they have this agenda that they feel is happening where Jesus, or the Messiah, not Jesus, because they don't believe Jesus is the Messiah, but their hope is that the Messiah is going to come and build an earthly kingdom. And I think what's happening with Judas is that they're starting to see everything take place. They're seeing miracles happen. They're seeing demons flee. They're seeing sicknesses being healed and all of this stuff that Jesus is doing. And they're now knowing for a fact that Jesus is the Son of God. Matthew 16, Peter gives that declaration, but all the disciples knew this. And so as they go, there's a point where I think Judas himself, maybe even all of the disciples were getting frustrated, but they're wondering, when is Jesus going to take the helm of the world? When is he going to create this earthly kingdom? And when is it going to start? Because we're ready to go. And so I think with Judas's betrayal, what he does is he is trying to expedite Jesus's messiahship. And he's trying to force Jesus to play his hand, right? And so he goes to the religious leaders, he offers them up and says, hey, I can tell you who Jesus is. And when they come to arrest him, he probably assumed that Jesus would lay the smack down and that he would perform some great miracles. And now the whole world will know that he is the Messiah that we all know he is. But Jesus doesn't do that. He ends up going to the cross and therefore giving his life so that we can be free. There was a very different kingdom that Jesus had come to build. But as we start talking about anxiety, I feel like sometimes, at least for me, and I'm sure that you can connect with this as well, is that oftentimes when I feel the most anxious, I try to force God's hand. right? It's that moment where you're praying for either clarity or a solution, and you are just crying out to God, and it just appears that he is indifferent or just isn't caring much at all. And he's just silent on the other end of that prayer, and it's frustrating. And so you try to create the scenario where you could fix your problem. I see this play out in men all the time, but women, you do that too. But in men, we like to know that we could fix the problem. And when we can't, we become vulnerable, and all of a sudden it makes us spiral even further out of control. And so when it comes to anxiety, I think a lot of times we try to force God's hand into fixing the problem instead of just resting and being patient. And in the book of Isaiah, he's a prophet of the Old Testament. There's a couple verses here in chapter 40 where it really just talks about comforting God's people. And I want to read just a couple verses from 27 through the end of the chapter. And I just want you to hear what God is trying to get us to understand. And here's what it says. It says, "Why do you, O Jacob, and speak, O Israel? My way is hidden from the Lord, and my right is disregarded by my God. Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is of the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint, and to him who has no might he increases strength. Even youth shall faint and be weary, and young men shall fall exhausted. But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles, and they shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." And so what he's saying here is that there are so many people in the world who try to run ahead of the game to either solve the problem before the problem exists, or they try to fix the problem as the problems come. And he says, regardless of who you are, whether you are a high social standard or low, whether you're big or tall, whether you're young or old, everyone is going to grow weary in trying to pursue all the problems of their life. What he's saying is that we need to take a step back, take a deep breath, and remember the one who is. Because the God that we serve, the God who comes to love us the way that he has, he never grows faint, he never grows weary, and he never tires and gets exhausted. He knows exactly how fast to go, exactly how far to go at the precise time to go. The problem is we're always either way ahead of him or we're way behind him. And what God is saying is that we need to stay in tandem with him. We need to be connected to him. The goad that is often referenced in the New Testament, where you're walking side by side to till the garden of the problem. And when we can start to do that well, anxiety will fall to the wayside. And so we need to be encouraged by this, because God hates to see that we're broken. In fact, if you heard the verses I read at the beginning, right, it says that we often look at God as if he doesn't understand. How could God possibly know what I'm going through? But I assure you, he does. He does. And oftentimes when we feel that our prayers are silent, Jesus knows all too well what that feels like when he asked the Father to take this cup of suffering from him when he was praying in the Garden of Gethsemane right before the crucifixion. So God knows exactly where you are, and he knows how far and how fast to get where you need to go. So trust him in the process. Don't try to expedite his response. Just trust the process and God, knowing his best interest for you, and it's worthwhile in the end. So friends, we hope that you again enjoy your break. We hope that you've enjoyed midweek this season, and we look forward to seeing you in the fall. Have a great summer.